What happens when a simple 30-day contract turns into a choice that could change two lives forever? Over the course of a month of living together, Leah and Alex go beyond the limits of a cold, pragmatic agreement, revealing unexpected emotions, repressed desires, and a connection that defies all predictions. On the last day of the contract, a decisive moment arises. Are they both ready for a commitment without deadlines, but based on the freedom to choose each other every day? Leah takes a deep breath and stares at the cafeteria floor. In her mind, scenes from a stable but distant life play like an unfinished movie. Her recent dismissal and the loss of her apartment have left invisible but heavy marks. In her temporary job as an administrative assistant, she clings to every task, as if a single mistake could cost her what little she has left. During her lunch break, Leah reflects on how she got into this situation. The weight of overdue bills and the fear of insecurity make it difficult to hope for better days. As a child, she had always believed in her own potential. Now, doubts plague her. Difficulties have shaped her, forcing her to fight to remain firm and perhaps invisible. The door to the meeting room opens, and Alex crosses the hall. He maintains steady steps and a calculated posture, making a point of not revealing his emotions. He reviews the files she had organized with precision. After a few seconds, he lifts his gaze, watching her with a neutral expression. A man of few words, Alex maintains a sharp gaze with no obvious traces of kindness. In silence, he watches her, and she feels the tension growing. At the end of the day, Leah packs her bag and crosses the room, hoping to leave the company in peace. Suddenly, a firm voice stops her. "Leah, wait a minute," Alex asks, in a tone that sounds more like an order than an invitation. Leah turns around, her heart racing. What could he possibly want? Bluntly, Alex explains that he needs someone for a new project. The proposal, however, is nothing like what she expected to hear. Alex doesn't mention a traditional position or a formal contract. Instead, he suggests an unconventional experience, offering her a temporary contract as an escort on social engagements and business trips. It would only be for 30 days, with no extension. The payment offered would allow Leah to reorganize her life and even invest in a future that already seemed distant. Leah swallows, trying to process. The invitation seems both surreal and tempting. In another era, she would have instantly turned down such an offer. However, circumstances push her towards vulnerability and doubt. His words echo in her mind. "You'll have 24 hours to decide." Alex expresses no emotion, making it clear that the decision is entirely hers. Leah feels the intensity of that cold but firm gaze. Leaving the office, she wanders the streets as if looking for a hidden answer around every corner. The idea of spending a month in the company of such a distant and enigmatic man frightens her. Even so, the practical benefits seem obvious. When she arrives at his small apartment, she sits down at the table with a cup of tea. The bills pile up, reminding her of every time she had put dreams and ambitions on the back burner to deal with urgent needs. How many times have you found yourself in a moment where everything seemed uncertain and every decision seemed to carry an enormous weight? This feeling is all too familiar to Leah and Alex. Characters who face their fears, insecurities, and make choices that profoundly transform them. Inspired by stories like theirs, I created my ebook, The Secret of Mature Romance Stories. And for the first ones to arrive, I'm giving the ebook away for free. A gift. Because I truly believe that the stories and lessons in it can open up new perspectives and even help you face your own choices with more confidence. Enjoy it while it's still available. The link is in the first comment of this video. As the clock strikes midnight, Leah realizes that the decision will weigh heavily on both of them. The proposal challenges her to confront her own limitations. However, the chance to get her life back on track appears strong, and logic overcomes fear. With her cell phone in hand, she types a short, direct message. "I accept your proposal." After pressing send, a mixture of relief and anxiety sets in. The next morning, Alex keeps his word. He receives her without beating around the bush, handing over a detailed contract without sentimentality. No expectations, just professionalism. Leah signs the document in silence. He explains the rules. She must accompany him to events, presentations, and business meetings. In return, she will receive a substantial payment at the end of the period. The direct exchange makes it clear what he expects. During the 30 days, there is no room for interpretation. He stipulates what he expects from her and leaves no room for deviation. Throughout the day, she questions her own motivations. The initial impression of Alex remains unchanged, a pragmatic man with no apparent concerns beyond work. Watching him, Leah feels a curiosity growing, but remains cautious. On the way home, she reflects on how that contract marks the beginning of something new, but enigmatic. Later, as she packs her things and prepares for her first appointment, Leah tries to anticipate what awaits her. She tidies up carefully, not so much in terms of appearance, but in terms of caution. When she arrives at the meeting point, she sees Alex already waiting. He greets her with a slight wave and leads her to the car. There is no casual conversation, just a brief exchange of information about the event. During the journey, Leah watches Alex from the sidelines, trying to figure out what motivates him. At times, he seems distant, almost absent, as if he were carrying some invisible burden. When he catches her gaze, he looks at her with a serene countenance, without a hint of discomfort. When they arrive, he guides her to the main entrance of an elegant hall. Keeping a neutral countenance, they cross the hall while curious faces watch them. She struggles to maintain her posture, aware that she must fulfill her role without question. Gradually, she realizes that the gazes are not only on her, but also on Alex, as if he were an imposing and enigmatic figure, a man who commands respect without having to utter a single word. Between restrained smiles and formal conversations, Leah tries to decipher every detail of the environment and the people around her. Alex seems like an enigma, and his presence exerts a mysterious force on those present. At one point, he approaches her and whispers quick instructions about the next contact. Leah watches intently, trying to catch the nuances and intentions in the few words he uses. The event proceeds at a calm, almost distant pace, and she remains in her role. However, something catches her eye. Alex behaves in an unusual way, with cold gestures and calculated precision. At the end of the evening, he accompanies her back to her car. Without revealing anything, he makes it clear that her role has been fulfilled to perfection. On the way back, silence takes over. Leah feels the weight of that first meeting, and, as she gets out of the car, she realizes that the contract is already beginning to shape a new phase. She takes a deep breath and goes home, reflecting on what she has experienced. Between the fear of the unknown and the promise of a renewed life, she feels the shadow of something she still can't fully understand. Leah adjusts the strap of her handbag as she gets out of the car. In front of her, Alex's mansion stretches out, imposing and sophisticated, displaying a modern but cold structure, as if the grandeur of the building carried, at the same time, an uncomfortable emptiness. Next to her, Alex looks at her quickly and leads her to the entrance. There he gives her a set of direct and precise instructions, establishing a series of boundaries that will define her new routine in that space. She follows every word, absorbing Alex's cold, calculated tone. He doesn't allow unnecessary gestures or deviate from his purpose. When he is finished, he leads her into a large room with neutral walls and minimalist decor. The bed, large and luxurious, occupies the center of the space. He then says goodbye with a brief wave and returns to the silence of his own routine. Leah observes her surroundings, still assimilating the reality of that contract. The atmosphere of the mansion seems as organized as it is impersonal, and she begins to notice the loneliness that Alex maintains around him. The days pass in a sequence of controlled interactions, where each action follows a specific purpose. She notices that Alex avoids any contact beyond what is necessary, remaining distant and busy with tasks and appointments. One morning, on her way down for coffee, Leah finds him at the end of the table, concentrating on a report. He looks up briefly, nods in greeting and returns to his reading. Alex's routine proves to be inflexible and meticulous, and Leah notices that he tries to avoid any connection that might go beyond the purpose defined in the contract. One afternoon, Leah decides to explore the mansion further. She walks through the long corridors in silence, observing the works of art on the walls and the details that make up this rigid and controlled environment. As she passes one of the rooms, she hears Alex on the phone, speaking in a firm, authoritative tone. The conversation, although brief, reveals the seriousness with which he deals with his business and the burden of responsibility that seems to shape his reserved posture. The following evening, Leah accompanies Alex to yet another event. By his side, she crosses the hall with careful steps, noticing that his presence attracts the attentive gazes of everyone around. Alex guides her with brief, expressionless words, as if he had rehearsed every move. Leah then finds herself in a role that requires careful observation and analysis, perceiving the nuances and codes hidden in each gesture. At one point, while he is interacting with a business colleague, Leah feels Alex's eyes fixed on her, as if trying to decipher something. She remains still, letting her posture respond to his inquisitive gaze. At the end of the event, he accompanies her back to the mansion. The walk there is silent, with Alex immersed in thought, and Leah aware that his distant behavior seems to hide layers that have not yet been revealed. The next day, when she goes down to the cafe, Leah finds him concentrating again. This time he lifts his gaze and watches her for a few seconds, almost curious. The moment stretches into an awkward silence until he interrupts her with a brief explanation of the day's agenda. She follows his instructions, noticing that although he remains distant, her presence seems to create a subtle change in the atmosphere of the house. During the week, the days are mixed between commitments and moments of isolation. She accompanies him to meetings and events, increasingly aware of the impact he has on people. Alex remains unwavering, with a posture of superiority and authority, as if his role in the world were defined by a series of expectations and responsibilities that he carries without question. At the end of one of her appointments, Leah feels that the weight of her routine is beginning to affect her. In an almost impulsive gesture, she decides to confront the coldness of that environment. In a casual conversation, she asks Alex why he keeps such a rigid routine. He looks at her with a calculating gaze, but replies in a controlled tone that focus and discipline are essential to maintain success in his business. Leah then realizes that Alex's life revolves around a cycle that allows no deviations. However, while he is explaining, she notices a trace of tiredness in his eyes, a slight shadow that reveals something beyond his impeccable posture. She doesn't press the issue, but the brief exchange of words marks the beginning of a new perception. In the days that follow, their relationship remains shrouded in silence and formality. Alex's routine remains unchanged, but Leah begins to notice the small contradictions that appear in his gestures, as if he is struggling to preserve that invisible barrier between them. As she walks through the halls of the mansion or accompanies him to his appointments, Leah senses that he avoids any kind of vulnerability, always keeping to the precise lines of his duties. One evening on her way home, Leah finds herself lost in thought about the nature of their relationship. The experience, once surrounded by financial expectations, now makes her question more than just the contract. She feels a growing curiosity, a desire to understand what drives Alex to create such strong barriers around himself, a need that goes beyond simply observing the established rules. The following evening, as they pass the door of the mansion once again after an event, Alex offers a brief comment on her behavior, praising her discreet posture. His statement sounds unexpected, as if a small opening had appeared in the wall of distance he had erected. Leah receives the compliment with a nod, aware that this simple gesture indicates a minimal but significant transformation. The month goes by, and each day seems to bring them closer together, albeit without another word. Alex keeps the boundaries well defined, but the atmosphere in the house changes subtly, as if her presence brought about a slight, almost imperceptible change. Leah feels something growing in the space between them, a restlessness that is becoming familiar. At the end of another engagement, Leah watches Alex from afar as he bids farewell to the guests with the same formality as always. When they return, she notices that the structure of the routine seems to turn every interaction into a calculated game, but a different tension unites them. As they cross the mansion's garden, she takes one last look at the environment in which she is now immersed. In her mind, one question remains. What mysteries still lurk beneath Alex's firm, silent facade? What can still be revealed in the time that remains? The answer, still unknown, seems hidden beneath the layers of a coexistence built on silence and invisible boundaries. The sound of the door closing echoes through the corridors of the mansion, and Leah, back after an event with Alex, crosses the main hall. That night, their interactions flowed without him having to give her constant instructions. One look from him was enough for her to understand the expected role. Over time, she adapted to Alex's environment, and he, it seems, recognized her ability to adjust, remaining discreet but efficient. The next morning, Leah came down for coffee and found him in the lounge. Alex, concentrating on some documents, maintains an impenetrable air, but raises his gaze briefly when he notices her presence. He doesn't show any emotion, but the brief exchange of glances seems significant. Leah decides to take the opportunity to observe him more closely, noticing the small nuances in his expression that, for someone who didn't know him, might go unnoticed. Their conversation is limited to an exchange of information about the day's agenda, and as always, he speaks in an economical tone, with no room for emotional interpretations. However, Alex's constant presence in that environment creates a tension that she can't ignore. The days go by, with Leah becoming more and more intrigued, wondering about the life behind Alex's routines. Even though he is distant, he seems to carry secrets hidden under a mask of coldness. In the middle of that week, an unexpected event interrupts the monotony. A visitor appears at the mansion. When the door opens, a man with a stern expression and determined steps enters, greeting Alex with familiarity. Leah observes the interaction from a distance, noticing the cautious look on Alex's face as he introduces him as Daniel, an old friend and business colleague. As he approaches her, Daniel greets her with a cold smile, his eyes watching her with disguised curiosity. Leah returns the greeting, aware that Daniel's presence awakens a new dynamic in the house. He gives Alex a questioning look and, with a slight smile, asks about her role there. Alex simply replies that Leah accompanies him on social engagements and trips, explaining the arrangement in a vague and reserved way. Want to be inspired by life-changing journeys? Download the ebook while it's still available and see the power of choices. Daniel's reaction reveals a slight surprise, as if he hadn't expected Alex to involve someone in such a personal contract. However, he disguises it and carries on a polite conversation, mentioning his work and the impact Alex has on the business world. Leah feels like a mere spectator in the conversation, but doesn't miss the chance to catch the gestures and glances between the two men. Daniel, although cordial, asks incisive questions, insinuating that Alex may be straying from his usual focus. His comment makes Alex slightly uncomfortable, but he responds confidently, stating that he maintains absolute control over all aspects of his life. Leah notices Daniel's gaze focused on her, as if seeking answers to his own doubts. For the rest of the visit, his friend keeps a light tone, but his presence clearly represents a silent assessment of Alex's choice. Before leaving, Daniel calls her, and with a discreet smile mentions that he has never seen Alex act in such a peculiar way when bringing someone into his daily life. The words echo in Leah's mind, creating a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. After saying goodbye, she walks through the hall in silence, feeling that the conversation with Daniel revealed much more than he had said. That evening, Leah decides to confront Alex about Daniel's comment. She cautiously questions why he had hired her for such a personal role, but he only replies that he believed she would fulfill the role without unnecessary involvement. Alex's calculated tone seems to hide something he doesn't want to discuss. Leah insists, implying that her presence has aroused a curiosity he couldn't control, and Alex stares at her in silence, offering no explanation. Leah watches him, and a moment of tension grows between them until he ends the conversation, saying that it is only a temporary transaction. However, the brief silence between them indicates that something has changed, even though they both avoid going any further into the subject. She returns to her room with her mind full of thoughts, feeling restless. Daniel's shadow and his words seem to reveal a weakness in Alex's control, and this makes her question what is really going on in his mind. Over the next few days, Alex seems even more reserved, and Leah notices that he avoids mentioning his friend's visit. Daniel's presence, even after his departure, creates a slight tension between them. She watches Alex intensify his concentration on his tasks, as if to eliminate any doubts that might have arisen. In one of the events that follow, as the two of them cross the hall, Leah feels the pressure of Alex's gaze on her, as if he is trying to assess her ability to follow the plan. His rigidity increases, and Leah senses that he wants to maintain complete control, perhaps so as not to deviate from the expectations he has set for himself. Daniel's visit seems to have awakened in Alex a need to reaffirm his decisions, and this affects her, making her question the extent to which he really understands his own intentions. That evening, as they return to the mansion, Alex observes her in silence for a moment longer than usual. The tension between them grows, but he refuses to express any emotion. She senses that somehow he wants to test the limits of his own discipline, as if to prove something to himself. At the same time, she realizes that the rigid control he tries to maintain hides not only a desire to avoid feelings, but a fear of something deeper. Before going to sleep, Leah finds herself reflecting on Alex's behavior. She realizes that Daniel's doubts about Alex's choice have revealed an unexpected vulnerability, even if he struggles to hide it. Now, the mystery of who Alex really is becomes more intriguing, as if the wall he has erected is beginning to show cracks. At the last appointment of the week, Leah accompanies him to a formal reception. She stands next to him, aware of the curiosity her presence arouses in the guests. Throughout the evening, she senses that Alex is evaluating her every word and action, trying to ascertain whether his choice was the right one. However, in a moment of distraction, he reveals a slight trace of tiredness, a detail that Leah doesn't miss. On the way back to the mansion, she wonders how far he's willing to go to maintain his uncompromising image. Each day reveals more about the internal conflict he seems to be facing, and Leah realizes that the desire to understand Alex is growing like a flame she can't control. Leah walks down the silent corridor of the mansion, feeling the air heavy after Daniel's departure and the revelations it has brought. In the weeks that followed, Alex maintained her strict routine and avoided new personal interactions. Leah, on the other hand, noticed the growing tension in the house, which seemed to intensify with each appointment. One morning, on her way down for coffee, Leah finds him on the phone, discussing a problem in a firm tone of voice. When he hangs up, Alex reveals that he is facing a business crisis and needs to resolve the issue urgently. Leah observes his face, where an expression of concern stands out in an unprecedented way, and notices that, for the first time, his usual calm is shaken. That afternoon, Alex remains in his office, busy sorting out the situation. When Leah offers to help, she's met with a look that expresses distrust and weariness. Undeterred, she insists and proposes a practical solution to the problem. Alex is reluctant for a few seconds, but in the face of her confidence, he decides to accept her suggestion. Over the next few hours, Leah helps him with information and strategies. As she works alongside him, Alex observes her dedication, and a comfortable silence settles between them. Leah maintains a determined focus and offers ideas that he would never consider. At that moment, the initial tense atmosphere gives way to a sense of collaboration. By the end of the day, the crisis shows signs of resolution. Alex looks at Leah with a mixture of surprise and admiration, recognizing that her contributions were essential to the success of the solution. Leah returns his gaze, feeling that her professionalism has broken down the first barrier in their relationship, creating a subtle basis of trust. As they walk down the corridor together, Alex asks her about her professional skills and interests. For the first time, he shows a genuine interest in getting to know her beyond her role in the contract. Leah shares some of her experiences and aspirations, revealing details about her past and what led her to accept that deal. The conversation flows, and they both realize that in that brief moment, the formalities dissolve. The next morning, Alex invites her to an informal meeting with some business colleagues where he has to present the new plans. Leah feels a slight apprehension, but accepts the invitation, willing to maintain her professionalism. When they arrive, Alex meets with his colleagues, and Leah observes his posture, noticing how he takes on a natural leadership role. During the meeting, one of Alex's colleagues approaches her, asking about her role in the team. Leah responds confidently, mentioning the contract and her role in resolving some recent issues. On hearing her answer, Alex gives her a look of approval, as if her role had been legitimized in the eyes of him and his colleagues. When they return to the mansion, Alex thanks her for her support and, at the end of the conversation, pays her a brief compliment, mentioning the accuracy of her ideas. Leah accepts the compliment with a sense of restrained pride, aware that her position now goes beyond a simple temporary arrangement. From this point on, Alex seems to include Leah in more aspects of his work routine, making her part of his strategies and decisions. In the days that follow, their relationship takes on a new dynamic. Leah's presence is now welcome, and Alex shows growing respect for the way she handles each situation. Although he continues to maintain a controlled posture, Leah notices that he begins to relax, and the mansion, previously shrouded in silence, begins to display an atmosphere of lightness. One evening after dinner, Alex invites her to the library for a chat. He shares a little about the challenges he faces and the constant pressure to maintain business success. Leah listens attentively, with an empathy that he doesn't express in words, but that he sees in her gaze. At the end of the conversation, he thanks her for the company, mentioning how that exchange brought him a sense of comfort that he hadn't experienced for a long time. Leah returns to her room, reflecting on the evening. Her admiration for Alex grows, but it also makes her question why he remains so isolated. Over the course of the week, she notices that he observes her more often, as if trying to understand what motivates her to be there. This silent interest strengthens an invisible connection, which they are both reluctant to admit. One afternoon, Alex proposes that Leah accompany him to a different social event. He explains that he wants to relax, without the burden of formality. When they arrive, Leah notices the relaxed atmosphere and realizes that Alex is also allowing himself to adopt a less formal tone. She watches him interact with people, showing a more approachable version of himself, and senses that he is trying to show a vulnerability that he has kept hidden. During the event, Alex and Leah share light conversation and the occasional laugh. He asks about her personal interests, and Leah, surprised, reveals hobbies and ambitions that she rarely mentions to anyone. Alex listens attentively, and Leah realizes that his interest goes beyond the formality of a contract. The trust between them grows, and the invisible barrier that separated them weakens. Back at the mansion, Alex thanks her for her company, and for the first time mentions that her presence has eased the burden of his responsibilities. Leah listens in silence, with a feeling that goes beyond admiration. Alex, although he doesn't say it outright, shows a lightness that seemed impossible before. At the end of the evening, Leah realizes that this moment marks the beginning of a new phase between them. The contract remains, but now the bond between the two takes on a greater meaning. Every gesture and word shares something that both are reluctant to admit, but neither can ignore. Living together becomes more than just an obligation. Before going to sleep, Leah feels a wave of curiosity and empathy rise up inside her. Alex, with all his rigidity, begins to reveal himself as someone who wants more than just success or control. She senses that, beneath the mask of the calculating businessman, there is a man who is searching for something that he himself may not yet understand. Leah falls asleep with a feeling of tranquility, but also of expectation. The idea that something deep and unexplored is emerging in that relationship instigates her, and she knows that time will hold revelations and moments that will define the path they both follow side by side. Leah wakes up with her mind full of the conversations she has had with Alex over the last few days. The shared moments have created an unexpected closeness, and she feels an urge to better understand the man behind the mask of control. Determined not to be sidetracked, she goes down to the cafe, ready to face another day of commitment at his side. As she crosses the hall, she finds Alex on the phone, gesturing intensely. As he closes the call, he takes a deep breath and mentions that he is facing a delicate issue with a client. His words carry a silent weight, and Leah notices the tension in his shoulders. That evening, over dinner, Leah breaks the silence and shares a little about the challenges of her past, such as insecurity and the search for stability. Alex listens in silence, with a look that conveys absolute attention. For the first time, Leah feels that he is trying to understand what led her there. For those looking for new beginnings and new paths, The Secret of Mature Romance Stories is available as a free download to the first users. At the end, Alex allows himself to be vulnerable. He reveals that years ago he faced a loss that led him to adopt a cautious attitude. Leah listens, remaining calm, but realizes the pain in his words. The revelation doesn't sound like an outburst. It seems like a silent invitation for her to get to know him beyond the facade of success. As he speaks, Leah feels a new admiration growing inside her. The authoritarian posture and control he now maintains seem less like a necessity and more like a way of avoiding disappointment. Alex describes the responsibility he has imposed on himself, as if every decision he makes determines the future of many people. After the confession, silence falls between them, but not in an awkward way. Leah stares at him, feeling that the conversation has revealed a deep layer of his personality. She wonders how many people have heard these words, and concludes that perhaps he has never shared so much with anyone. The next day, Alex invites her for a walk in the gardens. They cross the lawn in silence, while he watches the horizon with a distant expression. In a moment of spontaneity, Leah comments on the impact of their time together, admitting that he has become important to her. Alex watches her in silence, without replying. The walk continues, and Leah notices that Alex is gradually relaxing. He shares some travel stories and mentions professional challenges. During the conversation, she feels that he is including her in a universe that was inaccessible until then. With every word, the connection between them grows, as if they were both walking an invisible path of mutual discovery. Later at the office, Alex calls her to review some documents and asks for her opinion on a specific project. Leah, surprised, contributes suggestions that he listens to carefully. At the end, he mentions how much he values her vision, and Leah realizes that her role there is no longer limited to the initial contract. The professional admiration he shows her strengthens the bond between them. As the days go by, Leah feels that living together takes on a new dimension. The previously impersonal atmosphere of the mansion now shows traces of warmth, as if they both shared a space of trust. Even without verbalizing it, she understands that what exists between them transcends a simple work agreement. Her presence provokes a subtle transformation in Alex, something he can't control. One quiet evening after a long day of meetings, Alex invites her out for dinner. The relaxed atmosphere of the restaurant allows them to talk in a light and personal way. Leah talks about old dreams and mentions adventures she wants to take, while Alex listens with genuine interest. She feels that he values every word, as if he is trying to understand who she really is. Over dinner, he shares a memory from his youth, describing the impact the loss of a loved one had on his life. His voice takes on a tone that Leah has never heard before, and she realizes the weight of the experience that has shaped his attitude. He mentions that since then, he has never allowed anyone to get so close as to represent a new vulnerability. Leah observes him with empathy, understanding that Alex, despite his strength and success, carries a pain that he carefully hides under the facade of a ruthless businessman. She senses that the barriers between them are becoming increasingly fragile, as if they are both moving towards an implicit understanding, a connection that neither of them planned, but which seems inevitable. After dinner, when they return to the mansion, Alex accompanies her to the bedroom corridor, and, as they say goodbye, he hesitates. Leah senses that something is hanging in the air, a tension that mixes unspoken words and feelings that they both avoid naming. However, he only mutters a brief goodbye and walks away in silence, leaving her alone to reflect. That night, as she lies down, Leah feels her heart respond to the feelings growing for Alex. The idea of being by his side, of building a relationship that transcends the contract, arises in her mind, even though she is reluctant to admit it. However, the bond between them now grows stronger with every passing moment, and she realizes that there is no going back to what they experienced before. As she falls asleep, Leah realizes that the journey has changed them, not just because of the time they shared, but because of the intensity of the emotions that arose. The contract that was once a simple financial exchange now loses its meaning. She feels that the month they agreed on will not be enough to resolve everything that fate seems to hold in store. The next morning, Leah receives an unexpected message. An old colleague offers her a job opportunity that could be the way out she's always been looking for. The offer seems tempting, with promises of stability and a fresh start in another city. She considers it cautiously, aware that there are still days left on her contract with Alex, but for the first time, the idea of leaving before the end presents itself as a real possibility. Over coffee, Alex observes Leah's distant expression and questions her. She reluctantly mentions the offer and the chance for a fresh start. As she listens, Alex keeps a steady gaze, showing no emotion. He tells her that she should do what she thinks is best for her future. However, a slight hesitation in his voice suggests that Leah's decision affects him more than he wants to admit. Throughout the day, the thought of leaving early begins to occupy Leah's mind. Living with Alex had awakened feelings that she tries to understand. But now the choice between continuing with the contract or exploring new opportunities brings unexpected unease. As she walks around the mansion, she observes the details of the space with an anticipatory nostalgia, as if part of her was already preparing for goodbye. That night, before going to sleep, Leah reflects on everything she experienced with Alex. The deep conversations, the confessions, and the lightness that gradually emerged in their routine made her see beyond his impenetrable facade. However, the opportunity represents a chance for a fresh start and, for the first time, the security she has sought for so long seems within reach. The next day, Leah decides to talk to Alex definitively. She approaches him while he is going over some documents, and after taking a deep breath, mentions her intention to leave before her contract expires. Alex stops what he is doing and watches her in silence, his eyes conveying a seriousness she has rarely witnessed. He asks, in a firm tone, if the decision really comes from a desire to find something new or to avoid what is growing between them. Surprised by the question, Leah feels her heart racing. She reflects before answering, recognizing that perhaps the idea of escaping the feelings that have arisen also contributes to her decision. Alex listens and, with a controlled expression, reveals that although the contract has limits, he didn't foresee the impact that living together would have on both of them. His confession brings a new perspective, and Leah realizes that he has allowed himself to admit a vulnerability that he had avoided facing. Their conversation continues in a serious tone, but with a sincerity that brings them even closer. Alex mentions that her presence has transformed his routine, and that even without intending to, he has come to value her in a way he hadn't anticipated. Leah, feeling the impact of his words, decides to reevaluate her choice. The job offer, once so attractive, now loses some of its luster in the face of the connection she and Alex have built. That night, Leah lay awake, replaying the conversation in her mind. Alex had expressed, albeit subtly, that she represents more than just a temporary arrangement. Recognizing the importance he attaches to them living together makes her wonder if leaving really was the best option. At dawn, she decides to announce her final choice. When she meets him the next morning, Leah tells him that she has chosen to stay until the end of her contract. Alex listens to her decision in silence, but she notices a restrained gleam in his eye, as if an internal tension had dissipated. He thanks her with a sincerity that seems unexpected, and Leah understands that the bond between them has now strengthened in a way that neither of them had planned. From that day on, their relationship takes on a lighter tone, as if Leah's decision had broken down the last barrier between them. Alex allows himself moments of relaxation, and social engagements once rigid now become opportunities for more intimate conversations. The atmosphere in the mansion, which had once been cold, takes on a new energy. One afternoon, Alex invites her on an unexpected outing. He proposes a trip to a quiet place, away from the routine and pressures of work. Leah accepts the suggestion, and together they set off for a small town, where they spend the day exploring the streets and small cafes. During their walk, Alex shows a relaxed and curious side, as if he had rediscovered a freedom he had long left behind. At the end of the day, sitting on a bench overlooking the lake, Alex shares a reflection on her impact on his life. He mentions that, with Leah, he has rediscovered aspects of himself that he thought he had forgotten. Leah listens in silence, touched by his sincerity and the tone that expresses something beyond words. There in the evening light, she feels that this moment represents more than a simple conversation. On the way back to the mansion, the connection between them strengthens without the need for more words. They both understand that their choice to stay together represents something greater than any contract. However, they are still hesitant to name what they feel, as if the time between them still holds unspoken revelations. That night, as she prepares for bed, Leah reflects on her decision to stay. The desire to stay by Alex's side now outweighs any impulse to leave. The idea of building something with him that goes beyond a fixed term becomes a growing certainty. She realizes that the contract that brought them together is now just a detail, a formality that doesn't define what they really share. She falls asleep with a sense of peace, understanding that the road ahead may be unpredictable, but that she is willing to explore it alongside Alex. The connection between them, once subtle and undefined, now becomes a silent promise that they both carry without having to say it. The end of the contract is approaching, and the atmosphere in the mansion reflects a subtle tension that Alex and Leah avoid naming. They both know that the agreement binds them for only a few days, but living together has transformed this bond into something that goes beyond any signed paper. Over breakfast, a different kind of silence sets in, as the two exchange glances that carry a mutual understanding. The best stories of transformation begin with a choice. Download the ebook and get inspired by The Secret of Mature Romance Stories. That afternoon, Alex receives a phone call that changes the rhythm of the house. He answers with a controlled tone of voice, but the content of the conversation reveals that he has received an international proposal, an unmissable offer to expand his business. Leah watches his expression change as he listens to the details, realizing that the opportunity represents a professional challenge and at the same time a decision that will impact what they have built. After the call, he walks down the hall, thoughtful, and Leah notices that he hesitates to mention the proposal. Even so, she feels the need to ask about it. Alex, in a direct tone, explains the proposal and the benefits this expansion would bring. He mentions that the project would require his presence abroad for months, perhaps even longer. His voice, although firm, carries an uncertainty that has never been apparent before. Leah listens carefully, feeling a tightness in her chest as she imagines the distance between them. However, she keeps her expression calm, allowing him to conclude. At the end, Alex stares at her, as if looking for a reaction, but Leah avoids showing any feeling. As he walks away, he seems to be carrying with him an emotional burden, an internal conflict that she recognizes, but which he doesn't verbalize. Over the next few days, the thought of his departure settles between them like a constant presence. Leah notices that Alex intensifies his work pace, almost as if he were looking for a distraction. He avoids discussing the proposal, but she knows that his decision is getting closer. The tension grows, and they both walk around the mansion as if they were avoiding each other, but they can't seem to get away from each other. That evening, when they meet for dinner, the silence between them becomes almost unbearable. Leah decides to take the initiative and mentions the proposal, asking him directly what his decision will be. Alex watches her in silence, his eyes conveying a mixture of doubt and regret. He replies that the opportunity represents something he can't ignore, but admits that this time the choice carries a weight he hadn't imagined. His confession reveals a vulnerability that Leah had never witnessed before. He admits that the desire to expand his business has always been a goal, but now, considering the distance between them, the decision challenges him. Leah feels a mixture of sadness and understanding when she hears his words. With a firm voice, she says that whatever the decision, she wants him to choose for himself, without being bound by a contract or external expectations. Alex seems to absorb the impact of her words. For the first time, he confronts his feelings for Leah openly, recognizing that their bond no longer depends on any formality. Distance or time won't erase what they've built, and they both understand this without having to say it. However, the reality of the separation still stands in the way, and Alex finds himself facing a dilemma that goes beyond any rational calculation. That early morning, he finds her in the living room, where Leah is gazing out at the garden illuminated by the soft light of the moon. He approaches her in silence, and she feels his presence at her side. The moment doesn't require words. Only mutual companionship seems to fill the space that tension has created. Alex, after a long silence, murmurs that he feels the need to choose a path, but still has doubts about what he really wants. Leah listens, and her answer comes in a calm tone. She says that his decision will be respected, regardless of the impact. Their relationship, built up over the weeks, represents something that neither time nor distance can erase. Alex's expression softens as he listens, as if those words dispel some of the uncertainty that surrounded him. The next day, the tension between them eases, but a melancholy still hangs in the air. As she walks through the corridors, Leah allows herself to reflect on the future and what the contract represented for both of them. The choice to stay by Alex's side went beyond any financial value or obligation. Now the bond between them exists freely, but the farewell still hangs over them, carrying the weight of the emotions they have cultivated. On the final morning, Alex makes the decision he has been avoiding for days. He informs the team of his response to the proposal and then seeks out Leah for a final chat. When he meets her in the lounge, he looks at her face, as if seeking one last piece of certainty. With a firm voice, Alex reveals that he has chosen to turn down the offer and stay, because he understands that his desire goes beyond a professional achievement. Leah listens to his confession with a mixture of relief and emotion. The initial contract that had bound them together now means nothing. His decision represents a conscious choice, free from the impositions of an agreement. At the end of the conversation, Alex approaches him and says that his desire is to build something real, without restrictions. They both meet at that moment, and the certainty that they will continue together is established. The weight of the choice disappears, and the mansion, once shrouded in silence and tension, now radiates a feeling of lightness. Leah and Alex realize that from that moment on, every decision they make will be based on their mutual will. What they have built goes beyond a contract, becoming something real. That evening, as they watch the night through the windows, they both recognize the journey that brought them there. The idea of a future together, free and chosen daily, represents the promise that each of them carries in their hearts. On the final morning of the contract, Leah wakes up with a mixture of anxiety and serenity. For weeks, the routine at Alex's side had transformed the way she saw life and her own feelings. The contract she had signed without much expectation was now coming to an end, but the relationship that had united them went beyond the terms printed on the paper. Today, the last day of that agreement, represented a turning point. On her way down to the cafe, Leah finds Alex already at the table, his expression calm but full of meaning. They both remain silent, as if the moment demanded an implicit respect. As they look at each other, they share a mutual understanding, a silent recognition of everything they have built. The house, once a cold and distant space, now carries the weight of the conversations and moments that have transformed them. Alex observes her attentively and with a direct tone mentions that the contract ends at the end of that day, but says that the choice between them now transcends any document. He admits that even in the face of his desire to keep everything under control, living together has revealed unexpected feelings. Leah listens with her heart racing, aware that what they share finally goes beyond any formality. In the afternoon, Alex proposes a walk in the garden, the same one where they have met in silence so many times. This time, however, the atmosphere is different. As they walk side by side, he intertwines his hand in hers, as if to sign a new commitment, not based on obligation, but on genuine desire. Leah squeezes his hand, feeling the presence and the silent promise that this gesture carries. The conversation between them flows naturally, and Alex shares plans about how he imagines the future, mentioning that he wants someone to share the challenges and moments of rest with. Leah listens to him, surprised and moved by the transparency of his words. This man, who previously seemed unattainable and closed off, now fully includes her in his world, recognizing her as someone important in his life. At the end of the evening, Alex organizes a special dinner, a symbolic farewell to the contract and a celebration of what brought them together. The dining room, illuminated by soft light, creates an intimate atmosphere, as if everything around them were conspiring to make that moment unforgettable. Over dinner, they talk about the future, about dreams and the details of the life they want to build together, as if, in that instant, they were drawing up a new contract, now based solely on mutual desire. Leah mentions some of her ambitions, and Alex listens to her with the same respect and admiration he has always shown. With every word, the bond between them strengthens, as if by sharing their visions of the future, they both recognize that their journey together represents something much greater than a simple agreement. Leah understands that they are now making plans as partners, without fear of what that might mean. When they finish dinner, Alex accompanies her to the bedroom corridor, and as they say goodbye, he hesitates. Leah feels the intensity of that moment, and before any words are spoken, he pulls her close in a hug that carries all the emotions and silent promises that have built up between them. That simple gesture confirms everything they both knew, but were reluctant to admit: the desire to build something real that goes beyond contracts or external expectations. That night, as she prepares for bed, Leah reflects on her journey alongside Alex and how the bond that united them has evolved. The cold and impenetrable man she had known now reveals himself in layers, showing a sensitive and sincere side that she had never imagined she would find. She realizes that, despite their differences, they are both looking for the same thing: a relationship based on choice, free of impositions. At dawn, the last official day of the contract becomes the first day of a new phase. Alex, already on his feet, is waiting for her in the garden. He smiles as he sees her approach and looks at her with an expression of calm and confidence. The soft light of the early morning illuminates his face, and Leah feels an inexplicable peace, as if everything around her affirms that their decision has been made. Alex holds her hand again and with a serene tone reaffirms that the bond between them represents a daily choice. He mentions that alongside her, he has rediscovered a side of himself that he had left hidden. Leah listens to him with a heart full of emotion, and in the end, they both agree that the relationship they are building has no deadlines or conditions. The choice to be together comes from a deep and sincere desire. Both walk through the garden, now sharing a life without contracts, without the rigidity of previous days. The mansion, once silent and lonely, is transformed into a cozy place, where every corner represents a moment, a shared memory. Leah feels that she has found not just a home there, but a space where her feelings and dreams can flourish freely. At the end of the walk, Alex pulls her closer, as if to affirm his decision to be by her side, without reservation. Leah responds, knowing that their future will be based on small choices, all made freely. The idea of being by his side, of building a path together, represents a certainty she never imagined she would find. So as they cross the garden back to the mansion, they both recognize that what unites them now is a commitment without paper, a silent and eternal promise. The freedom to choose their path together on a daily basis makes them stronger, and the connection they have built without contracts or restrictions represents the true essence of the love they have found in each other. The journey that began with a formal contract ends with a silent promise of complicity. From that moment on, Leah and Alex live with the certainty that they are together not out of obligation, but because of a choice they both carry in their hearts, a commitment that is renewed every day.